All right, well, hopefully that works, and maybe it'll be a little bit better. And I might just in class then have to have you guys move to the side or something like that, if that's what's going to work better to kind of capture and get the content that we need on those. So, all right, but because you're here, Candy will be involved with review session. Yay! That always makes it fun. We'll try to keep our review sessions about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes at the most, and so we'll try to keep them pretty short and sweet, and like I said, we'll do them every Wednesday, and then we'll do some larger ones too leading up to it. Okay, so when we look at colonization, there were 3 G's, the 3 primary reasons for why we colonized, and those 3 G's were
God, glory, and gold.
Very good. Okay, so God, glory, and gold in whatever order that you want them to be, but those were the direct reasons. So when we go glory, the reason for that, it's political, right? It's about power, and it's about having that wealth, not through actual wealth, but wealth through the control of more regional land mass. Does that make sense? And the opportunity politically for them to create these colonies under the system that started with an M called mercantilism. Very good. This idea that the colonies would only ever exist for the benefit of the mother country, right? So then we go obviously to gold, and gold is purely and completely an economic thing, right? Let's get specific routes to Asia for these luxury spices and things like that that are becoming very, very desired within European community, but also specifically, yes, gold and silver. Okay, you have to realize that at that point in time, everybody was paying for goods either in trade or, what's the term? It starts with an S. No, it's specific to gold and silver. Specie, very good, yes, specie. Okay, that's how we're paying for things. So we need gold in order to make that happen. And obviously we have the Reformation going on in Europe, which means that we need to spread Christianity, right? Because Christianity is the best faith that exists out in the world. And so this idea that we had to spread that to the regions of the Americas. So keep in mind that when we are spreading that faith, we'll often see then that cultural tie. Yes, ma'am?
What is specie?
Specie is gold and silver. Hard currency. Does that make sense? Okay.
How does it spell? Sorry.
It's S-P-E-I-C-E. C-I-E. I'm trying to see it in my brain.
S-P-E-C-I-E.
Okay, we got it? Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm not a good speller myself. So I usually have to write things down to figure it out. But anyway, so that's our real reasons for doing this. And if you think about the cultural ties that stick with the Americas, when we talk about the United States as being this white Anglo-Saxon Protestant base, well, we're Protestant largely because we were settled by the Puritans, which were originally non-separatists, then they become separatists, right? But they're British, right? They are Protestant in their base, okay? Whereas you look at Latin America, and it's predominantly Catholic. Why? Because they were predominantly settled by Spain, and they are a Catholic country, right? So it makes perfect sense when you think about it. But those 3 motives largely reinforce each other. When we look at the impact on American Indians, the biggest thing that you need to understand about the impact on American Indians is corn. Okay? Yeah, right? You wouldn't think so, but there's been like numerous times on the national exam that it's asked you, and it will say something like, asks about what dramatic change occurs for the native population prior to the colonization that leads to the rapid formation of American tribal identities and societies. It's the cultivation of maize. Corn, okay? Corn. So basically what that does is it takes a very nomadic American indigenous peoples and puts them to being less nomadic. Now that exists until the introduction of the horse by the Spanish for the Great Plains Indians, and the Great Plains Indians become more nomadic as a result of the horse. But otherwise, prior to that, they were pretty, I don't want to say they were sedentary, they were semi-nomadic. Okay, they hunted and fished and had villages that they returned to, but they also traveled.
So corn made them less nomadic?
Less nomadic.
Horses made them
More nomadic. Yep. Right? Because if you're raising corn, you have to be there to tend it. Horses allow you to move much easier, so it makes them less. The other great impacts on the Native Americans was the encomienda system. What was the encomienda system?
Okay, no, it was done, it was like the Spanish
Yes.
to the Native Americans.
Yes.
And it was based, all I remember really was like, they offered them this thing, they were like, you have to do all of these things, but they didn't understand English, so they couldn't, comprehend, and they couldn't comply, so they, killed them.
Yeah.
And basically
Basically.
it was like a form of slavery.
It is.
Yes.
It's slavery within the American Indian or the American Indian populations. And when I say American Indian populations, I'm not talking about United States American Indian populations. I'm talking about American Indian populations, right? The Americas, North,
Yeah.
South, Central, etc., right? But yeah, it was basically this slave labor system that was designed, and hey, you're going to work for us, and you're going to go find gold for us, and find silver for us, and do all these things for us, and if you don't, we're going to kill you.
And they were just like, I mean,
And
hello?
put your mark on this dotted line. What's my mark? What? Huh? Spanish? Huh? I don't comprehend. It's like, I don't understand what Johnson is saying right now, right? But it's like Spanish and not, okay? The other big thing is disease. The American Indian population simply cannot withstand the diseases that are brought by the Europeans. You have to understand that American Indians culturally were drastically different than culturally the Europeans were. So much so, for one, they did not have domesticated animals until the Europeans come. They didn't domesticate animals. And because they didn't domesticate animals, they weren't living with domesticated animals in their homes. Europeans like to live with domesticated animals. Literally in their same home. And I'm not talking about cats and dogs. I'm talking about like pigs, okay? Because it was easier to keep them alive in the winter if they were sharing the same home as you versus them being out in a barn.
True.
So Europeans were exposed to all sorts of diseases because of their exposure to fecal matter.
Europeans. Smart.
Yes. They didn't bathe very often.
No.
And the rivers were much more polluted than they were in the Americas, and all these other things, right? So they had this long-standing exposure to some of these diseases, that including smallpox, which then they develop the ability to fight those diseases and survive diseases like smallpox. Even the Africans had the ability to combat these diseases, and so do the Asians. Why?
Is there around them?
Because they were around them more, because those trade routes were much longer established, right? So they're able to combat those diseases much more readily than the American Indian population, who largely is sitting out in this isolated world without access to any of those biological diseases. And so it basically acts as biological warfare against them. Now, it goes both ways, though. The Columbian Exchange, what's the Columbian Exchange?
It's like the exchange of different products from the old world to the new world and the new world to the old world.
Yeah, what kinds of things go from the old world to the new world?
Horses.
Potatoes.
Not corn, but potatoes. Horses, potatoes. Corn goes the other way from old world or new world to old world.
Wait, but
Yeah, but corn, the change for the American Indians is that because they're sedentary, because of maize, it makes all of these other things more difficult. Sorry if I didn't explain that very well. Okay, does that make sense? So, Because they're not traveling around as much, it leads to greater, the disease spreading and da-da-da, okay? Pigs, yep, pigs come to the New World, okay?
You want more?
Nope, that's fine.
Different ideas, different foods, animals.
Yeah, ideas, food, animals, disease, okay? Disease is the biggest one. But disease goes the other way too. What disease goes the other way? Syphilis, yeah, it's syphilis, okay? Also, corn goes the other way too, so keep that in mind. But that Columbian exchange is the movement of things this way. Syphilis, tomato, potatoes, some potatoes, like the potatoes of Chile and Argentina that were multicolored, including purple, okay? Pretty sweet. Okay.
Yeah, there was something about those potatoes amazing.
There was something about potatoes.
Can we please watch it now because like teachers will not know.
History Japan.
Do we have
probably
to
not.
know all of these?
No, what you need to understand is the concept of what the Columbian exchange does. Does that make sense? You don't need to know these types of things or these specifics. No, the reality of it is this part of your national exam will only be about 5% of your total national exam, okay? The first part, chapters 1 through 3, and the last part, chapters 30 through 32, are only going to be 5% of your national exam. Which is why we do 1 through 3 in the summer, and we do 30 through 32 pretty quickly at the end of, right before your exam, okay? So, because it is such a small portion of your national exam. But when you have questions like this, they're going to ask about the big ideas, the things like corn, the 3 Gs, encomienda system. Those are the things that you're going to find. You might see something about De las Casas. Who was De las Casas?
He was the guy that
He went what? About Columbus?
he was the religious person with him, right?
Not with him.
Against it. Well, he went with him to the Americas and was against his.
He went with Cortez. He was
Oh,
later.
Cortez.
Okay? But yes, he was against what Columbus was doing and what Cortez was doing. And yes, you're right. He was acting as an advocate for the American Indian people in saying that, hey, you can't do this to people. They're people. Who cares if they're natives? They're people.
Okay, with the corn,
Yes,
so they were already like semi-sedentary with the corn there.
because of corn.
Because
Yes.
of corn. And then the Europeans came along and then like put in all these things, and it's because of corn that all of those things were bad. Like, they were
Yes.
super bad.
Yes,
'Cause
that
they
were
had to
super
stay
bad.
there, 'cause they-
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
That just made me confused.
So,
Confusing it. Okay.
so like,
You want to explain it or you want me to?
I think, okay,
Okay, go
so
for it.
the corn, you know, so they already had corn, so they were already like semi-sedentary, so they could like move around, but they always like came back to the same spot. So when the Europeans came, for example, like disease, they couldn't move away from the disease, so the disease like spread more easily throughout them. And then with like the encomienda system, they couldn't move away from that because they had corn to tend to, so the new people just kept getting killed by the Spanish.
So, the thing about it making them nomadic to less.
Okay, corn makes them less nomadic. Horses make them more nomadic.
So it's not saying
Horses
like,
come later.
Okay.
it's not saying like corn came over and made them like corn is just like
Was there, which
was
made
there
them.
and, like, so
Okay,
it-
never mind, it's fine.
yeah, okay.
They figured
Sorry,
out.
sorry, sorry,
You're fine.
sorry,
You're fine.
whatever.
They figured out prior to them coming, to the Spanish and the other settlers coming, that hey, we can cultivate corn on a mass scale, and by doing so, it makes it easier for us to provide food for people. So let's be semi-sedentary and cultivate corn. Yay, go corn. Okay? And then they trade amongst each other and figure out how to grow corn everywhere from Arizona and New Mexico to New York State. And corn grows. Yay, corn. Okay?
No, I just, yeah.
Just, yay, corn. Okay. Bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, so there were 3 types of colonies. A charter, which was a company or colony owned by a company. So think charter C, corporation C, right? So what's an example of a charter colony?
Massachusetts, Bay Colony.
Okay, yeah, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, okay? Rhode Island, okay? So then we go to the royal colonies, okay?
Georgia.
No, Georgia
wait,
is
no,
not.
No, wait, no.
It
Maryland,
becomes
Maryland.
actually a royal, but not originally.
Maryland.
Maryland is originally. Georgia is originally a proprietary colony, right? Because of the fact that it is settled and created as a what kind of colony? A colony for whom? For what? For King George to do what with people?
Prisoners?
Yeah, put people with debt and the prisoners. Very good. Both of those. The debtors and the prisoners, get them out of England. We'll send them to Georgia, founded by Oglethorpe.
What was an example of a royal colony?
You could use Maryland, or you could, eventually Georgia does become one, but Maryland, Virginia, yeah. Think of it as, it's called Mary's Land originally, right? And it's called Virginia after the Virgin Queen, Queen Elizabeth I, okay? And Mary's Land, yes, after Mary Tudor, aka Bloody Mary, okay?
Was there any other proprietary colony or?
Yep. Pennsylvania, very good. Pennsylvania, founded by none other than Mr. William Penn. Okay? So, yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
So now there's also were 3 regions of
So-
colonies, and it really isn't important that you necessarily remember what ones go in what regions, but understand the primary differences between those regions, because it is those differences amongst those regions that will largely shape, the next almost 100 years of American history, okay? From
Yeah,
the
no.
time of colonization forward, right?
Not much.
It doesn't make that big of a difference, except for it drastically leads us down the road to the Civil War, right? So it's important to
Yeah.
understand that CCOT, that change in pattern continuity over time kind of a concept, right? Because of that. So those 3 regions, you have the New England colonies, okay, which includes Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire, okay? It does not include Maine because Maine was not yet, didn't exist, it was Canada to begin with, so it doesn't exist, so it's not there. But then this New England colony is the first one we have, is Plymouth Colony, that was founded by the Puritans, who the first group of Puritans were non-separatists, okay, because they did not want to do what? Separate from the Church of England. Very good. They wanted to do what?
Set an example, be a city upon a hill for everyone else to reform and become that.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted to be a shining example of what could be, right? Okay, and that was kind of their goal. But up there, it was very rocky soil, and so as a result of it, they're mostly subsistence farmers and otherwise predominantly make their livings off of shipbuilding and fishing and trade. Okay? Industry. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we have the middle colonies. Now, it seems kind of weird to us that these are the middle colonies because you'd be like, New York, that's not in the middle. How is that in the middle, right? Okay, because it's New York, right? How's that in the middle?
It used to
Shouldn't
be
that
just.
this be the middle? Right, but you have to realize that Florida wasn't there, and also Georgia comes later. It's actually colonized after pretty much all the other colonies are set up. So then, it maybe looks a little bit more in the middle when you consider those factors, okay? So, when we take that and we think about that, those middle colonies, specifically Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, they were the breadbasket colonies, all right? That's what they were doing. They were growing a little bit larger style crop, but still we see a little bit more religious diversity in that region, but not as some in some of the other areas. And they are getting some education. The reason why New England had a ton of education is why? Because again, the Puritans, right? We have to educate kids so they can read the Bible, so they can have a conversion experience and be a Puritan. So they need to be able to read. in order for that to
that was
work.
the New England.
That's New England colonies. So as we move farther south, we see less and less education amongst the masses. Why? Because of the fact that, again, one, there's not such a religious convergence in those other colonies, and the other part of it is they're more spread out. Why? Because they need more land to
Big plantations.
big plantation cash crops, right? So the farther south we go, the more cash crops we're going to see, which is why in Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and eventually Georgia, we're seeing at first tobacco farms. Now eventually those tobacco farms will largely go away, and we'll turn our attention to a better cash crop known as cotton. And then eventually we begin to call cotton, what kind of cotton? King cotton, but that's not until after the invention of the cotton gin, which was invented by Eli Whitney. See, you guys got this stuff. You got it a lot better than you think that you do, okay? But in the southern regions, we mostly see more Anglican church, and we also see, in Maryland specifically, more religious toleration, only in the fact that Maryland was founded as Mary's land. So Maryland is founded as a what colony? A Catholic colony. And because it's a Catholic colony, they are the first of all of the colonies to write the very first law code in the United States to give what? Not necessarily freedom of religion, but religious toleration. It's called the Maryland Act of Toleration, okay? And it basically sets the precedent that we would have freedom of religion in the United States. Do I need to change it up and do something other than this? Okay. So included within the southern colonies is the Chesapeake Bay area. That's the Chesapeake, Maryland and Virginia. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes.
I'm just still typing stuff down. Okay.
Oh, okay. So in Chesapeake, in Maryland, and Virginia, in that region specifically, even as the other southern states began doing more cotton-style farming, that region will maintain more of the tobacco as the others become more cotton-based, okay? But eventually they too will move away from tobacco, and Virginia will actually move more towards more industry. But the land itself worked great for them, for the cash crop. It is not, most of them will have to use indentured servants in order to utilize this and grow these vast swaths and have these huge plantations, but those indentured servants are not used really that much after 1676 as a result of
Bacon's rebellion.
there you go, yeah, because you do what with bacon?
You serve it.
You serve bacon, right? So Bacon's Rebellion ends indentured servitude, which then, yes, leads us to utilize more of the slaves. The slave trade has already began, but it makes it more profitable to use slaves and much more secure to use those slaves as well. Okay. Can I go forward? Okay. Ta-da!
Wait, so like religious,
I thought there was one more.
more religious tolerance, it got more and more as you went to the south?
Yes, yeah. Just because there wasn't strict religious groups that were super controlling of what you were doing all the time. Does that make sense? So that's why we wind up seeing it open up more and more for those particular groups. Okay? So, questions about today's review?
Is that it?
That's it.
Nice.
Today was short and sweet. Some of our other ones are a little bit longer, but that one was pretty short and sweet. I could do some quiz questions to fill up some additional time if you would like.
Sure.
Yeah.
Some quiz questions?
I want candy.
You want candy?
Absolutely. Has anybody shown you the history of Japan?
Yes, I watched it.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
I watched it, but that's why we're not
Yeah, that's
watching
why
it.
you're not showing it in class.
Yeah.
So you'll get our references.
It's funny, and I agree with you that it is funny, but at the same time, it's
It's
Not-
clever. It's like accurate, but funny.
yeah, it is.
Okay,
We
can
just
I
can't show it in class. Or yeah.
Can I just
Can I just say something that I
What?
put in my notes?
Okay.
Okay, so when you were talking about the three causes, for religion, I wrote, knock knock, it's Europe. They just want to bring guns and clocks and Jesus.
True story, yeah, okay. We really did. Okay, let's see. There were other faiths other than just the Anglicans in the south and the Puritans in the north. We also had another faith in Pennsylvania, the Quakers, okay? And what's so drastically different about the Quakers?
They are okay with religious toleration
And what else?
and they're pacifists.
And what else?
And
No religious conversion.
Well, that's, Puritans don't have
Oh,
that.
okay.
But you got a couple, what else?
Like slavery?
They don't like slavery, right? They are the first group to say, hey, this whole enslaving other people, not that's such a good thing. They also were very pro
women.
women, yes, women equality, okay? In fact, Alice Paul was a
They
Quaker.
let her preach. Because,
Yeah.
like, okay, it wasn't Alice Paul, but it was like, was it Alice Paul that like went off with some other guy?
No, it wasn't
It
Alice
wasn't
Paul.
It was and something.
and B.
I think her name was
And
Starts with an H.
and Hutchinson.
There you go, yeah. I think we both should get one for that, just because of the fact that I don't know if she would have gotten the Hutchinson had you not got the A and H.
Yeah, I wouldn't have gotten it if you had said that.
So you helped each other out. It's the wrong hand.
And Burrell, that's what I was
That's an
thinking
M,
of.
but not the right hand.
And,
Let's see what other stuff.
Anne Hathaway.
What causes the Puritans to go from being the separatist to the non-separatist? Or non-separatist to separatist, sorry, because we start out non and go the other way.
They realized that, it's not worth it anymore. We're like, nope, you're never gonna be like us. We're better than you. Bye.
Pretty much, yeah, okay. And so the second wave that comes to the Americas become the separatists and are fully breaking away from the English crown. What happens to kind of break down or cause the downfall of the Puritans as a whole?
Yeah, the Puritans.
Okay, well, what about the Great Awakening then?
I was gonna say the Salem witch trials.
Well, that's part of it also, but the Great Awakening definitely is part of it. Tell me why you say Salem witch trials.
I say the Salem witch trials because everybody turned on everybody and everybody realized like, hey, yeah, this is actually kind of crazy and we should probably not do this anymore.
Yeah. Eventually, they point the finger at one too many people,
Yeah.
including the governor's wife,
Yeah,
which
they-
doesn't really work very well, right?
No.
So the great thing with the Great Awakening is they moved away from predestination, more like you could have like a coming to faith moment, I guess. It wasn't just predetermined like the Puritans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
It nullified it.
Yeah, exactly. And so you had this conversation between the old lights and the new lights, and the old lights are like, no, this is how things have to be, and the new lights are like, no, we don't have to be predetermined to go to heaven or not go to heaven. Part of that also is the Puritan faith in and of itself was basically doomed to implode upon itself because you had to have had this conversion experience, and the only way you could have a conversion experience is if your parents could have it and was a member of the church, and so it pretty much makes it so that it winds up being almost a hereditary thing of being able to go to heaven, and how does that work, right?
Yeah,
So I
they
could be
have
the
the-
worst person on the face of the earth, but yet...
They had the elite. They were the religious elite.
Yeah, exactly. And those elite become the members of the elect and wind up running your systems of government, okay? What is the first form of democracy in the colonies?
Shoot. Is it?
Is it in Virginia?
It was somewhere in that. It was in New England, right?
Yeah, it has to do with us when we first first have people come in?
Mayflower Compact.
There you go, yeah, the Mayflower Compact. It becomes the first written form of democracy in the colonies. And basically, oh, sorry,
That's
Lindsay.
what made
And yours sworn too. And it comes into this play of, it comes into this idea that we are going to agree in areas of disputes to work together to make things work better, right? The first system of legislature existed where?
Oh, it was the thing that starts with a B, right? The House of the
Purchases.
I couldn't think of the
That was in Virginia.
That was in Virginia.
Yeah.
Area. That's where you got the
What is
Virginia.
it first? Legislature?
It's basically the first legislative group or body in the colonies. Okay, the first legislature.
I remembered the word, but I didn't remember what it was.
You're getting there, right? Why does Roger Williams found Rhode Island?
He was with Anne Hutchinson.
Yep.
He was with Anne Hutchinson.
Didn't they want to go do something different from the Quakers, like a little bit, or like do?
The Quakers was
Not
the
the
Puritans.
Quakers.
Puritans.
It was the Puritans.
I was gonna say Puritans, but then like earlier you guys said that like, oh no, because Alice Paul was. Never mind.
And Hutchinson, Alice Paul. But basically he argued that there was this liberty of consciousness and that people should be able to make decisions for themselves, and those decisions would allow them to be able to either go to God or go away from God. And Anne Hutchinson will join him then in this idea because she was a woman and she was preaching, and they said, you can't be a preacher, you can't talk to God, you're a woman, what do you think you're doing? That doesn't happen. Like,
Oh, what was
I
his
made this
name?
connection in AP English today. We were reading an article about how women are intellectually inferior to men because their brain sizes are smaller. And like, I don't know, we were talking about it.
yeah, it is, okay?
What was the guy's name? Roger Williams?
Roger Williams.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, Roger Williams, okay? Let's see, trying to think of some other things. Talked about bacon.
I love bacon.
I don't know, well, I guess there's some people that don't like bacon, but I like bacon. When we look at the American Indians and the Spanish, specifically in the American Southwest, there's a lot more intermarry between the Spanish and the American Indians than there are between the English and the American Indians. That intermarry and that ethnic identity forms a group that's called what? It starts with an M.
Mulattoes.
That's
No.
black in Spanish,
Oh.
so you're close.
Mestizo.
Mestizo, okay,
Yeah, no, I was
mestizo,
thinking
yeah.
mulatto too.
Okay,
Someone in my creative writing class was like, I'm mulatto, and I was like,
okay. It's actually a term that's only applied in Latin America. It's not applied in the United States.
I know,
We
that's
don't
why I was
use
like-
the term, so that's fine.
Okay.
What is it
somewhere.
called?
A mestizo,
Mestizo.
it's MESTIZOS.
Oh, mestizos.
Yeah, mestizos. So, the American Indian culture in the American Southwest is different than the American Indian culture in like New England states like New York, because those in the American Southwest were more what?
Catholic because of the Jesuits?
Later on, yes, but
Right.
early on. Let's talk about prior to the arrival of most Europeans.
They were different because of the weather and how, like, it was warm in one place? I don't know.
No. Well, in New England, yes, they do fish more. And what
I
else?
was trying to think of words.
What if you like, they're, like, the people in the Southwest would have to be more nomadic because there's like no food and they can't grow things, where the people in whatever the place is, that's not Southwest, the other thing,
New
like,
England?
that's the New England area, might be a little more sedentary, like that, all those burial grounds and stuff, because like they could stay in one place and grow things.
It's They are, okay. You're right in the fact that yes, they could be more sedentary and they had a tendency to be sedentary in, the burial mounds are actually in like the southern states. That's where the burial mounds are. But in like the New England states, they had a tendency to be more fishing, hunting, gatherers, and so they were semi-nomadic. Interestingly enough though, although yes, I know where you're going with saying that it was difficult for them to grow crop and stuff, they actually were able to really grow quite a bit of corn using dry farming methods, and they were very successful at it. But the Pueblo culture of the American Southwest was vastly more sedentary than any other American Indian group.
Yeah, because
Was.
Aztecs.
Yeah, and the Aztec and Inca, they were sedentary populations, but so were the Pueblo culture, okay?
Yeah, they're in the Southwest and they got like those things in the mountains.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So
Their structures were not movable.
probably can't
Okay.
live in mountains.
So, does that make sense? So, they were much more sedentary in that aspect. The first slaves will arrive in Virginia in 1619, but remember, it's not until later as a result of what event? Bacon's Rebellion that we wind up seeing black slavery actually become a huge thing in the United States. But are slaves brought over initially for cotton?
No.
No, for production of tobacco, okay? What's different about slave labor in the deep South, so we're talking about Georgia, South Carolina versus Virginia?
Like in the more middle states, they were had paternal relationships with their slaves. They would take care of them. They taught them the Bible. They educated them and took care of them. Whereas in the South, it's you're gonna work for me. You're gonna give me money. And if you don't, I'm gonna beat you. But I'm not gonna kill you because that's a waste of money.
Yeah.
And be mean to you.
And go ahead.
I can't remember which country, but there's one that had the task system.
Which one is that?
I think it was the middle. No, the south.
It's the South, because the overseers often work in the regions with the individuals, and so they would go down there, and it was, you were given a task, and when you were done, you basically got to do what you wanted, which is why in the deep South, the slaves will retain a lot more of their African identity, which is why to this day, African Americans culturally in the South retain a lot more of the culture and traditions of tribal structure of Africa than those that were in the middle colonies, okay?
So
That makes sense.
deep South slaves could do more, they retain more of the culture.
Yep.
Slaves towards the middle colonies were
Christianized.
Christianized.
Does that make sense? Okay. So, let's see. What other countries colonized the Americas?
The Dutch and New York.
Very good. The Dutch get New York, right? Okay. There are others?
Yes, there's Spain with that, what, it's Mexico, right?
Yeah, what is
And
Mexico?
And Texas.
Yep.
And sort of like that.
Florida.
And Florida, yep.
Florida.
Okay.
Florida.
Okay. Are there others? Yeah, the French, okay? And the French predominantly take what?
Maine.
What becomes
Canada.
Maine, Canada, and there's another place that eventually they'll take over. Louisiana. Trying to think, is there, okay. That was kind of that info that I wanted to make sure to get through before you guys. Okay,
Just remind
do we
me.
need to get going, or do we want to do a couple quick guys?
I think we should.
Are we good? Let's would be good for a day. I think we're good. You want to take a Starburst before you leave?